Greetings, interwebs. It is I, Hewlett, David Hewlett, with my audio awesome for this week. This is the email of awesomeness that I like to send out. And I do an audio version of it just so you don't have to actually read all those words. But you want to go to techbandits.org and sign up, get subscribed to it, because then you can look at all the pretty pictures and click the links and all that kind of stuff. These are just things that I have found exciting or inspiring over the week, things that I don't know anything about and I have delved into in order to explore for myself. I just wanted to have something concrete come out of all of my very ADD approach to learning. I'm obsessed with lifelong learning, and it's nice to have a focus for the week where I can just pick a few subjects to dive into and hopefully get you excited about them as well. So here we go. This is a robo-bashing email of awesomeness for you this week. And I ended my last email of awesome with a racing Roomba. This is a land speed record for Roombas. This guy was trying to get the fastest Roomba on the planet. This week, I'm starting with BattleBots. Because, come on, BattleBots. I couldn't imagine a better way to inspire a love of robotics, programming, engineering, than with the sparks, fire, rending, bending, snapping metal of battling robots. I mean, just watching BattleBots is exciting enough and inspiring enough. But, how do you get involved in something like this? I was like, I just figured the BattleBots was for bigger brains and bigger budgets than I could ever have. How do you get into something like this without going broke? Well, I've discovered there is a lot more going on than the big fancy world of BattleBots TV or those live shows you see in Vegas. There is so much in the way of hands-on learning possible with this robo-sport, robo-blood sport, robo-oil sport, robo-coolant sport. This is why I don't name things. And I've got a bunch of links in here you want to have a look at. There's smaller versions that you can compete in that are at maker fairs, and even Dragon Con has one. It's just a much more accessible approach to it. I mean, admittedly, not as much fire and such as the big robots, but still very, very cool. There are very few people on the interwebs who can make science, technology, engineering, arts, and math as inspiring as my friend James, the Hacksmith Hobson. The Hacksmith and his Hacksmith Industries videos, they literally make me want to drop everything and join their merry band of engineers over in Kitchener. I am so in love with what they're doing. I got to spend more time out there. I can't imagine a better way of inspiring the next generation of brilliant minds than by turning our Hollywood movie magic silliness into real freaking working prototypes, like real Iron Man suits, real lightsabers, that kind of stuff. But James the Hacksmith Hobson doesn't stop there. No way. Not entertaining, not enough. He's given back big time, most recently by sponsoring a local university's BattleBot team. You got to see these videos. I mean, if you want to see epic adventures in teamwork, iterating, engineering, and design, and working through failure and against all the odds, you cannot beat the Hacksmith's latest 2 BattleBots episodes. Please check them out. Be sure to let the Hacksmith know how much us tech bandits and emails of awesome appreciate everything he's done. Let's get these videos huge numbers. I really want them to do incredibly well so he can keep sponsoring future teams. They're teams of robo-deserving brains. And if you're not subscribed to his channel, you're totally missing out. So go sign up right now. Go subscribe to the Hacksmith YouTube channel. It's just extraordinary. You will not regret it. Speaking of robots, a slightly more somber note. This is an update on our local high school robot club debacle, as I'm calling it. As you may or may not know, one of my old tech bandits, Lord Chunky, is a part of their robotics team, the high school robotics team. And they have been, rather unceremoniously booted out of their underground lair, which is the underground parking lot where they were building their robots and doing all their work for this first robotics competition. They literally spent their summers working on this stuff. They come back to school and they get booted out of the space they've got. They were not provided an alternative space. They were not given anywhere else to do this. They were just told they can't use that space anymore, nor can they use power tools, because apparently they're too dangerous. Power tools. Some of these kids are 16 years old. They're learning how to drive, and you don't think they're responsible enough to use a freaking power tool? The school did let them know, this is lovely, this is great, they will be building a workshop makerspace for them in 2 years' time. So basically, you guys don't matter, but in 2 years' time, the kids will be able to do this stuff. It's like, we're talking about kicking them when they're down, slapping them in the face. It's just, The school's gone ahead with something called the First Tech Challenge, which is a 12 to 18-year-old competition. Again, very cool, not to belittle it in any way, but from an engineering and design standpoint, it's nowhere near as complicated what him and his crew had been doing with the First Robotics Challenge. That's a different, same organization, different challenge. The First Robotics Challenge is just, this is professional robotics, basically. And now they're saying, like, let's go back to the kiddie stuff. So there's still no word on whether they're going to go ahead with the program at all. My concern is that even just by not saying anything, they're saying no, because they're putting it off until it's too late for the kids to register. So the way this works, I looked into this, asked Lord Chunky about it. Normally, the school pays for the registration, which is an eye-watering $8,000 Canadian. I had no idea it was as much money as that, but it's $8,000. The school will cover that when there's a team. The team, however, has to pay for the robot, the parts, and all that such, which usually runs around, Lord Chunky thought, around $6,000. There is a business component to this contest, which I think is really smart. They have a business team that's charged with raising and handling the money, looking after the budgets and the marketing, and convincing sponsors to cover the $6,000 to cover the robot costs. The problem is the school hasn't given them a space to work in. And if they don't have a space to work in, they've got to rent a space. And Toronto rental prices are insane, as I can attest to. I've got 2 new daughters. I've got my 2 nieces living in our house now because they can't afford to live in Toronto and go to university. It's, so the idea these kids are going to have to somehow cough up, at the very least, $2,000 a month for a place to run the club. I imagine it's probably more because they need a big space. I'm just incredibly disappointed with the Toronto District School Board, this school in particular. I don't understand. I don't think it's right that they crush these robo dreams like this. It drives me freaking nuts. In the meantime, I've offered them the Canadian garage, so they can at least do builds here. There's enough space, I think, for them to build. They've also got things like the Jonathan MLH is our fabulous Tech Bandit supporter who bought us this CNC, which is above my head here. They'll be using that. They'll be using my power tools. I will get insurance through production insurance. And Jane will help me figure that out so that it can happen here, which is just not a big deal. I think the school could have freaking done that, but they're not. So at least they have a space to build. I don't have a big enough space, unfortunately, for 40 kids. This club is huge, but at least they've got a place to build, and they've got some tools to work with, including some cool tools like Jonathan MLH's stuff, which I don't think they even had access to at the school anyway. So I will just do a plea here. If anyone wants to be a corporate sponsor, please let me know so I can put you in touch. Again, I wouldn't do the sponsoring. The kids have to do it. It's part of the business, but I can certainly funnel some sponsorships their way. In the past, I've been offered money for social media commentary. People seem to think that's of value to people. I've never felt comfortable with it, but I'll tell you, I'd be happy to promote any robot sponsoring individual companies or organizations if that gets funding for our future robot overlords. So think about that. If you think you could benefit, if your company or organization could benefit for some fabulous social media coverage with an old Stargate nerd and a bunch of kids who are way smarter than he is, then please think about it. I'm available at davidihewlett@gmail.com if you want to get in touch about that. And speaking of competitions, let's go to the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, shall we? Where it has been announced the winners. It has been announced. I don't know what happened there. Has been announced the winners for this year's Nobel Prizes. I immediately get nervous about this because I know there's going to be a list of names that I'm not going to get right. I'm going to start with a Nobel Prize, which I've got to admit I've never really cared about because I'm always interested more in the science and technology, but I thought it was important. We're science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, so I thought I should talk about this. This is the Nobel Prize in Literature for 2023 was awarded to John Foss. And it was awarded to him for his innovative plays and prose, which give voice to the unsayable, which it's kind of an extraordinary thing to say about someone's writing. I of course, only ever read science and technology related stuff, so I haven't read a word of his stuff. I did, however, find a quote, which I've got to say I quite like, so I will read it for you. Because if there was one thing he didn't like, it was big words. They just lied and covered things up, these big words. They didn't let what really was live and breathe, but just carried it off into something that wanted to be big. That's what he thought. And that's John Foss's from Alyssa at the Fire. The weird thing is here, he seems to be playing with punctuation. Like, there's no punctuation. He writes like in these long, like, run-on sentences like I do. I think it's very Hewlett. I think I will maybe I'll just call my style like, a Nobel laureate laureate style run-on sentences, because I speak in run-on sentences, let alone writing it. There is a great New York Times shortlist of John Foss's work if you want to sound, Nobel literate. The Nobel Peace Prize 2023. This is a big one. This is one we, always people take note of, and this is an extraordinary one. Went to the amazing Narge Mohammadi. I'm probably saying her name wrong, but it's for her fight against the oppression of women in Iran and her fight to promote human rights and freedom for all. Wow. I don't do enough with my days. So despite this amazing international recognition of her work, Mohammadi is still in jail in Iran. She's been arrested in Iran multiple times, been sentenced to over 30 years in prison. But even from prison, she's continued to call out the Iranian regime. She's written a book titled White Torture, which documents the tortures experienced by female prisoners of conscience in Iran. And I had to look that up because I didn't know what a prisoner of conscience was. I got the memory of a concussed paramecium, but I hate not knowing exactly what a word or phrase means. So I keep looking them up and keep forgetting what it means. So some stuff I've looked up before, some stuff I've just never heard of again. It makes reading the most ridiculous slog, and I only read digital books now because then I can tap a word and have it looked up for me. So it's the only way I go. So I looked it up, and a prisoner of conscience is someone who has been thrown into jail for peacefully expressing their political, religious, or other conscientiously held beliefs, or for their identity, even though they have neither used nor advocated violence. Hopefully this award will bolster support for her and her supporters in Iran and abroad as they bravely and peacefully, so key, especially these days, peace, continue their fight for human rights and freedom for all. It's just amazing what she's doing. Now, let's diagnose the Nobel Prize for Physiology and Medicine. And this prize, they thought it was going to go to chemistry instead, but they didn't. They awarded it to three people whose names I'm going to butcher: Caitlin Carrico and Drew Weissman for their discoveries concerning nucleoside-based modifications that enabled the development of effective mRNA vaccines against COVID-19. A little confusing for me. I had to look up a bunch of stuff here. I had to go back and look at all my COVID research, basically, which was the messenger RNA, this messenger ribonucleic acid. This is a treatment that has looked promising from the start, the idea of using mRNA to treat illnesses and such. But mRNA created in the lab, it kept getting rejected by our bodies. Despite the fact it's been engineered to be exactly the same as the all-natural version, the body just kept fighting it. Most biobrains gave up, moved on, assuming that mRNA treatments were unreliable, if not impossible. But not these two Nobel laureates. Nope. These dynamic duo figured out that the only difference between our body's mRNA, which is the in vivo stuff, and their lab version, the in vitro stuff, was that the body was protecting their mRNA with a specific chemical modification. So it's just this, they didn't think it was important. There was just some chemical modifications. They just assumed that it didn't matter. It all ended up in the same place. Well, turns out these chemical punks tried changing the mRNA to reflect those changes, and guess what? Success. They made their lab-grown stuff work in the body, did not get rejected. The mRNA was taken up by cells without the body's defenses rushing in like a pack of killer robots. But even the triumphant team goes, even this triumphant team, they finally solved this problem. Amazing discovery. They go to publish. Nobody wants it. Nope, nobody cares. They couldn't even get published in the usual hoity-toity magazines like science journals like Nature and Science. So they eventually ended up in this niche journal called Immunity. That's how little people cared. Although good for Immunity for doing that. But that was 2005. A few years later, as you all know where this is going, we got hit by a COVID pandemic. And suddenly mRNA is all the rage. Because here was a fast, safe, effective means of vaccine development by two people who were not getting any support at the time. I think it's just safe to say that we're all like virus experts now. I can almost hear Prof. Dr. James R. Gurney's eyes rolling in his head right now. Just the pandemic, we've all looked this up so many times. We all think we know it. But just as a refresher, vaccines train the immune system to recognize and then unleash our body's considerable defenses on invading viruses, bacteria, and fungi. Fungal infections are actually interesting because those fancy fungi cells, they change shape and they have a similar set of genes and cellular processes to us. So you try to treat a fungal infection, and you end up, damaging the host at the same time, which is no good. So currently there are 0. That's right, not a 1 fungal vaccine out there. But moving on, back to the other ones. Traditional vaccines have been created by using dead or weakened fragments of virus or bacterium. That's the usual way of doing it. 2005, these fancy mRNA skills allowed us to quickly create an mRNA instruction set that could tell our cells to manufacture just the spike protein part of COVID. So that's just the little spike parts that allow it to attach itself to our cells. And on their own, basically without the COVID attached to the COVID spikes, or these proteins, basically harmless. But what it did was it told our body to start manufacturing the spike protein, right? So our body sees it and goes, whoa, these are interlopers like any other thread. And our body seeks them out and destroys them. So having killed them off, the vaccinated body's defenses are on high alert to these same spikes. So should the virus turn up in the wild, those spikes immediately identified as previous troublemakers. They trigger the body's defenses, and that just gives us a healthy head start on the virus, can kill it off before it gets its spikes into us, so to speak. Vaccines and mRNA for the win. So I just thought that was an awesome story, because so basically without these 2 mRNA rebels leading the way, when nobody cared or supported them or their research, we couldn't respond as quickly as we did. I mean, they provided the skills and techniques to create a vaccine against a virus that, to date, according to the World Health Organization, has killed almost 7 million people globally. And it is probably more than that, because we suck at counting those numbers. But just extraordinary what they've done with this. A well-deserved Nobel Prize, I'd say. Now, what about that chemistry prize that they thought they were going to get? Well, that instead went to Mungi G. Bawandi, Louis E. Prusse, and Alexei I. Ekimov, who got awarded it for the discovery and synthesis of quantum dots. There's a mystery to look into there. Yes, big win for tiny nanodots in chemistry. And these are just amazing quantum-powered marvels that have not only made our LED screens better and brighter, they're actually able to they're used to capture cellular activity as it happens in our bodies. The things we could do with this stuff is extraordinary. And we're just beginning with this stuff. So the quantum dots, whole new class of materials, basically. And just by adjusting the size of these particles, literally just the size, which are roughly, let's say, a few billionths of a meter across, we can change their properties. I mean, everything from optical properties, electrical properties, magnetic properties, even melting points can change just by changing the size of it, thanks to our old friend quantum mechanics, that mystery that I've yet to unravel. So why is it such a big deal? An element's properties are determined by how many electrons it has, but when things get really small at this nano-dimensional scale, then quantum phenomena can take over. And these nanodocs, see, I get that? Nanodocs, doctors, I like what I do there, manage to create particles so small that their properties are determined by quantum phenomena. So this had been accepted as a theory before, but they knew these effects were possible, but they just figured it was impossible to build anything that small. So, what's the point? They left it at that, a theory. But then in the 1980s, Alexei Ekimov got nanoparticles of copper chloride to affect the color of glass, and could show that this was done through quantum effects, not by some kind of coloration thing. This was the size of these dots affected the color of the glass. Then Louis Bruce did the same thing in a fluid. And then finally, in 1993, Mungi Bawandi came up with a system for the chemical production of almost perfect nanodot particles. So he's come up with a system to create these things. It's like they start them forming and then they cool them at the right temperature to get them they're almost exactly perfect. And why is this a big deal, you ask? These dotty research punks believe that in the future, these quantum skittles, I don't know if that's an accurate term for it, but I just like the sound of it, could contribute to flexible electronics, even tinier sensors, thinner solar cells, and get this, encrypted quantum communication. Have to look into that one further. I didn't go down that rabbit hole. That's a whole other newsletter. The future of nanotiny is looking big and bright. Now, The last Nobel Prize we'll talk about today is in physics, 2023. Obviously, another big one, and a lot of unpronounceable names for me, of course. It went to Pierre Agostini, to Ferenc Krauts, and Anne L'Huillier for experimental methods that generate attosecond pulses of light for the study of electron dynamics in matter, which that's a lot to unpack. But that's what this newsletter is all about. It's about unpacking awesome. So let's get into it. The faster something is, the faster a camera has to be to capture it. Okay? So we all know that. It makes sense. Electrons are everywhere. They make up just about everything that's possible. They are essential in everything from electricity to magnetism, chemistry to thermal conductivity, and they even play a role in gravitational, electromagnetic, and then the weak forces as well, weak interactions. Up until now, the idea of catching a glimpse of something as fast as an electron was impossible. But then these physics whizzes succeeded in demonstrating a way of producing pulses of light that are fast enough to capture images of what's going on inside atoms and molecules. Now, the speeds here are kind of hard to get your head around, but get this. An attosecond, which is pretty awesome unto itself, there are approximately as many attoseconds in 1 second as there are seconds in the age of the whole universe. Like, that is how freaking small an attosecond is. And it's a scientific notation for, if you the number nerds out there, 10 to the negative 18, which is a decimal point, 17 zeros, and a 1. So creating a flash of light lasting an attosecond that is one crazy short pulse of light. And how is it done? This was crazy complicated. Obviously, did with difficulty because I probably had more difficulty trying to figure out what they were doing. But if I've got my head around it, what I get from their experiments is the Nobel laureates were using light that was emitted from a laser and then it was split into 2 beams. And then one beam was fired at a gas, while the other was sent through this delay, so it sort of bounced around for a while to sort of slow it down. When the laser hits the gas, it distorts the field around the atom that ties the electron to the atom's nucleus. So the center of the atom that's holding this nucleus in place, it gets disrupted by the light. The distortion allows some electrons to quantum tunnel out. So basically, that's like quantum, it's like teleportation, and escape from their nucleus. These free electrons continue to gain power before they get caught by the atom's field again. They get drawn back in, they drop back into place, and as they do, they lose all that excess energy that they've got while whizzing around out there, and it creates this ultraviolet flash. And these flashes create different light waves with a set of specific frequencies that are related to the initial laser. So obviously their frequencies are related to the laser that formed them. And so they can create a train of these pulses, which they then reunite with that delayed light. And then these pulses interact with each other. And some of them cancel each other out. Some of them increase the frequencies. And if they get the right combination of these frequencies and pulses, the light frequencies start getting bumped up until they're bumped up to these speeds, just attosecond speeds, just like ridiculously, inconceivably fast. These attosecond pulses allow laser brains to actually measure the time it takes for an electron to be tugged away from an atom. You can actually measure that now using this. They can help find out how tightly an electron is tied to an atom's nucleus. Before this discovery, the position of electrons as they wobbled about could only be measured as an average. Now they can actually capture their movement. Attosecond pulses can be used to test materials, see what's happening inside them, witnessing for the first time the detailed physics of atoms and molecules. These attosecond pulses could be used to create fingerprints for different molecules. So basically, by looking at a molecule and getting all the stats on what each molecule looks like, the inner workings of each one, they can create these fingerprints, which would be amazing for things like medical diagnostics, where you could figure out what a molecule is very, very quickly, and obviously very small amounts of it too. So, I have no idea where else this could take us, but they're literally examining the very fabric of our universe, and I can only imagine where that is going to take us in the future. And where is it going to take me? I know where I'm taking me. I'm taking me back to the community center for more live tech bandits. I have been invited back to our local community center. I'm extremely honored. They seem quite excited about it. I'm over the moon about it. I can't wait. And I've been thinking about I should probably play with some more puzzle-based escape room stuff, because that is something I really want to focus on. I think there's just so many exciting things you could do there. But then, of course, I did hear that BattleBots are kind of cool, so maybe there's something to look into in that. All right, Until we meet again, my friends, I will say be safe, be kind, be brilliant, cheerio, and huzzah! And please do head on over to techbandits.org, sign up for your newsletter so you can see what I'm up to. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.